Welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host, Jimmy Stewart. This is the other co-host,
Tommy Duncan.
And today we're going to talk a little sports. The NBA Finals just concluded, and we're going to analyze it and give our humble opinions of what we thought about the game. It should be a very interesting conversation. So, Tommy, let's start with you, man. What did you think about the overall series?
Well, I think that, it started out with a lot of splash, especially with Game 1.
Game 1 was a splash.
Yeah, a lot of the hoopla about some of the calls that were made.
Call reversal, yes.
And now we find out after the series was over with that LeBron got so upset that he fractured his head, which may have had a small impact on the overall series. I don't think anybody believed that they were going to win the series, but definitely I think that Golden State just had a lot of firepower, and LeBron had I think overall had a very strong series. But
he did. I mean, he averaged a triple-double.
Exactly.
Through the championship series. And how much more can you place on the shoulders of one person to do? I mean, I heard announcers in Game 3 and 4 saying LeBron needs to do more, but how much more can he do to keep his team involved?
Right. Well, I think that's part of why Golden State is the team that it is right now, as we found out in Game 3. I mean, you have Golden State's arguably two of their top three players who were, 11, 10 points, 21 points total.
21 points total.
And then you have a third player.
Thompson.
There you go. But then you have KD, who goes off and has his best game of the entire series with 43.
Now, not to cut you off, but my theory on that is that of course, Curry and Thompson are thinking, hey, let's just give this one back to Cleveland, and that way we can take it and win on our home court. It's not going to be a big deal if we give it one game. But evidently, KD didn't get the memo because he was not playing as if he wanted to give one back to Cleveland. He was playing as if he wanted to take all four, which is what happened. So
right. Who knows these things? But I will say this much. Cleveland had a very strong Game 1, Game 3, did not have a very strong Game 2 and Game 4. And ultimately what it comes right down to is that Golden State can really be taken over by at least three players, and Cleveland can only be taken over by one, right. And that's LeBron. And so as a result, if LeBron has a bad game, Cleveland has absolutely no chance. But as you can see in Game 3, any of Golden State's top three guns can have a bad game, and they still have a very good chance. Yeah. As a matter of fact, two of their top three players can have a bad game.
Yes, in Game 3, two players had a bad game, and they still won. But that also just goes to show just how much talent. This is where the NBA is now. You need at least two stars on your team to be competitive. You want to win championships in this league today, and our poor Dallas Mavericks with 0 stars at this point. Maybe Smith will become that type of player, but
Dirk is still considered a star, but he's not a superstar, and he can't carry the
Dirk now.
40. He's still a star because of his legacy, but he is not a superstar, and he can't carry the team.
He's a star because of his legacy. He's still capable of hitting 15 to 20 points a game. He's still probably one of the top 20 players in the league, but. Yeah, he's not a top 5 player. He's not an elite player. I'm not even sure he went to the All-Star game this last past All-Star. I can't remember. I know Dennis Smith was there. But back to the championship, the Cleveland at this point, like you said, with one star in LeBron, I think the coach made a strategic mistake in not playing the other kid much sooner, who was sitting on the bench. Rodney, what's Rodney's last name? They picked up from Arizona or from Utah. But he played in Game 3, had a good game. I think he had a pretty good game in Game 4. But overall, when LeBron sits on the bench to get a rest, which barely happens because the coach just overplays him because he has no choice.
Right.
But if he's on the bench, that team has no chance against Golden State. It doesn't take Golden State very long to run up a lead on you. You can be 3 or 4 points. The game could be going back and forth within a few points. LeBron goes sits on the bench, and 3 minutes later, you're down 15 points with Golden State. They can get on a run on you really quickly. So they're a very explosive team. It doesn't take a lot of time. And then by the time you call timeout and try to restart your troops, now you're exchanging baskets again. And next time you sit or take a little break and they go on a run, now you're down 20 points. So I mean, they go in really, they get those points in spurts. They get them very quickly, very fast, and give you the knockout blow really quick.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is one thing that I like to add into the equation because, I mean, we talk about Cleveland only having one star and one superstar, but technically they have at least two because Kevin Love was considered to be the man when he was at Minnesota. He was brought there to be a part of that.
He was, but come on, for $100+ million, is Cleveland getting a $100 million performance on Kevin Love at this point?
That's a very good point. That's very good because ultimately, if you have someone who's worth that much money, he should be able to carry.
He should. I mean, LeBron should be able to sit for at least 3-4 minutes, take a break. But when you're averaging 46.5 minutes a game, that means you're not resting very much. There's only 48 minutes in the whole game, so he's not sitting very long. So between that and just timeouts, and then the other thing about managing the minutes that I think I mentioned earlier, by him playing so many minutes, in the fourth quarter when you need your legs to be fresh, when the jump shot is not quite working, especially when you're front rimming the ball and your shots are front rimming, that's really just legs, just not that extra inch that you need to get off the floor, to get the ball just a little bit more on the trajectory. It's just not there, so the shots are coming up a little short. You need to be able to get to the free throw line at that point, or shoot a layup, or get fouled. But when your body is tired, I mean mentally tired, not necessarily physically tired, but when your body is tired, you sometimes find the desire to will your body to go in that lane where you know you're going to get a tough hit, get knocked to the floor, is difficult. Yeah. So I think it's easy to settle for the jump shot at that point rather than to go in there and fight that battle in the lane.
You're right, and I think it goes to show you brought up a very good point. That LeBron is averaging 46 minutes out of a 48-point game. I mean, yes. Who else on any team is having to play that much just to keep their team
Nobody
in the game? And then they got swept 4-0.
Yes.
But think about this: if LeBron wasn't playing 46 minutes, how bad this would have potentially been.
Oh, they are a lottery team without LeBron there. That's for certain. He's worth 40+ games to any team, a losing team. I mean, you could be a lottery team today and bring LeBron into the mix, and you eventually, you instantly become a 50-game winner at that point, and become a playoff team. But I guess the bigger picture is, what does it do for his legacy? What does he do now? I believe his contract is up with Cleveland, so he's officially a free agent. There's talk about him going to Philadelphia or LA. He has a home in LA from what I'm told. Business interests, he's now getting into the movie business, trying to produce movies. So there's talk that he may go to LA because that would make more sense geographically. But for his legacy, to me, that wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. He needs to win at least 2 more championships to be in that conversation of greatest of all time, which really, to get into that fraternity, takes 5 championships, take 5 rings to get into that consideration, that conversation. He only has 3, and he may have 4 good years left, and he needs to figure out where he's going to get 2 more from. It's not going to be in Cleveland. Right. In fact, if he stays in Cleveland, I'm not even sure they make it to the finals next year, because you can't count on Boston not having Hayward and Kyrie next year healthy. And if those 2 are healthy this year, they don't get past Boston.
I agree. And in addition to that, I mean, you have a very good young Philadelphia team that's coming up as well. So
and Toronto and the Pacers, I mean, all are going to get better. They're more experienced now. They've been there. They have a little more determination that we're not going to let LeBron and Cleveland beat us and use it as a doormat, which has been happening for years now. So that's only going to get tougher as he's getting older.
No, I agree with you. I mean, it's amazing that LeBron at 33 and 15 years in the league is playing to an extremely high level. I mean, most guys are well beyond their prime at this point. And LeBron, in some ways, is playing better ball than he played 4 years ago, which is amazing because he's a more well-rounded player.
He's a more well-rounded player, and he's certainly passing the ball a lot more, getting his teammates involved, which I disagree with that strategy for him. And a lot of people disagree with me, especially basketball guys. they say, oh no, that's the way you're supposed to do it. You have to get your teammates involved. You have to trust the other players on your team to develop that kind of closeness that you need. But let me ask you this, Tom. At the end of the game, is Green on that podium? I don't even think Love is on the podium. Any other supporting cast, J.R. Smith, any of those guys on the podium after the game? No. Who's on the podium? LeBron James. He's the one being asked, okay, well, you lost another game. What are you going to do now? If that's the case, if I'm going to be in the hot seat and we lose this game, then in the closing minutes, I need to have the ball in my hand. I need to control what happened. Win, lose, or draw, it's going to be in my hands at that point. For him to give the ball up to lesser players, like in what was it, game 1, I think he gave the ball up to Green driving the lane. And with 5 seconds left in the game, who do you want taking the last shot? Green, which I think Thompson grabbed him, he didn't get the shot off, he got fouled. Or LeBron James driving through the lane, and Thompson would probably try to foul him also. He may get fouled also, but between the two of them, I've seen people try to grab LeBron, hard foul him, he still get up and get the shot off, he's just that strong, still have a chance of making the shot, versus Green, who's a lightweight, who didn't even get the shot off once he got fouled. So, in that scenario, it may have made good basketball sense to pass the ball to the open man, but chances are, in that situation, Green is not going to make the shot. You need someone who's going to make the shot and have a chance at it. He goes to the free throw line. Of course, we know he makes one, misses one. Smith gets the rebound, and what does he do? He doesn't have enough basketball sense to even realize they were down one when his teammate went to the free throw line. And he can say what he wanted to say, but I know in his mind he was thinking that we won the game because he was trying to run the clock out. So either he fell asleep, he didn't look up at the scoreboard, he didn't realize what was going on. So once again, should you put trust in your teammates who, one, are not strong enough to make the play, two, mentally may not even be in the game at the end and know what's going on?
Well, I think you're right. Ultimately, there was only one player that he could truly trust, and he's no longer with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that's Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie was an assassin.
Yes.
So when Kyrie was there, when they did win a championship against Golden State, LeBron got a chance to actually get some rest, get some minutes sitting and resting, because Kyrie was in the game. He could take over a game and carry them. But that guy was just ice cold. Use an alpha term. But he doesn't have that now. He doesn't have anyone on that team that can carry them.
Not one.
Not one.
Not one team.
Yeah, not one.
Not Love. Not surely not J.R. Smith.
Oh, come on.
I mean, there's no one. I mean, there were a couple of guys who had a game or two where they had a pretty decent game, but no one who he could count on game in and game out to produce. And that, unfortunately, that's why they lost, in my opinion, because again, with Golden State, I mean, yeah, Stephon Curry, you got Klay Thompson, you got KD. I mean, for what it's worth,
after that, you still even have Green, you have Livingston.
Andre Iguodala, when he got in the game, who could take over a game.
Great defensive player, also can pump in some points. But even the big guys like McGee and West, man, those guys can come in and score and make some plays. So they have a team full of shooters and guys who can make some points. They don't count on those lesser guys to win games for them, but it is nice when you can sense 2 of your 3 stars and still continue to score points and stay in the game.
Right, and that ultimately is the name of the game. And unfortunately, Cleveland was too dependent on LeBron James, and Golden State could depend on several players in order to carry the team for you, and that's what made the difference. And in addition to the fact that, okay, if you look at both teams, Cleveland had the best player among both teams, but then after that, Golden State had probably the next 5 best players.
Yes.
And that's the story of the game. That's the story of the series.
So for all those people out there who thought the reversal in game 1 was a big deal, to go from a charge to a blocking foul, thought that the distribution of fouls was uneven. And I'm just going to say, from watching the series, the ref kind of let them play ball. There was a lot of contact in this series. A lot of players who could have been crying to the ref about getting fouled. They let a lot of incidental contact go, and they didn't think it interfered with your shot. So to say that, but But also, let me say this about LeBron. LeBron will never ever get his fair share of foul calls. He just won't. He's almost like a Shaq. And I had a discussion with my cousin after game one, and I tried to explain to him that Shaq never got his fair share of foul calls. You know, I mean, the guy was 7 foot, 7'1", 360 pounds. It takes a bulldozer to move that guy. So some lesser player trying to check him, and who happened to be, grab him, hit him, the refs look at that and say, oh, that's nothing. And I think they do the same thing with LeBron, because there's so many times he drives a lane. When he starts to drive, there's somebody pushing him, grabbing him, hitting him. There's body contact there. Then he goes up, and somebody else is pulling on him and swiping at him, hitting his arm, hitting his wrist. And the guy can still maintain enough composure to get a shot off, and a lot of times make the shot. And I think when refs look at that, and with all that contact going on, and he still makes the shot, they just figure, hey, that a little bump here and there is nothing to him. And they may be right. I think it's just human nature to look. I mean, I believe he's 6'9", 270, and he's solid as a rock. I mean, I don't think there's any foul in the guy anywhere. So for that, for somebody that tall and that big and that strong, be coming at you down the lane, there's not a whole lot you can do. So even when you intentionally try to foul him, a lot of times he still gets a shot off. So he doesn't get his fair share. He never will, because of his size and compared to everyone else. But with that, so the people who complain that LeBron got fouled here, so what? He gets fouled every time he gets the ball. Every time he gets the ball and drive, I guarantee if you go back and just look at it, the whole play, somebody's fouling him on every play, just about. Unless he has a wide open layup and he's by himself. Otherwise, if it's contested, he's being fouled.
On the other hand, let's talk for a few minutes about Golden State, what this win means for their legacy, and then, of course, obviously the reporters, of course, trying to create a storyline, of course, off of the MVP. Of course, KD got it. And,
he deserves it.
Yeah.
I mean, Curry had a couple of good games, but KD didn't have a 10-point game. KD, I believe, he shot 57% from the floor, 56% from the floor. He shot 47% for three-point for the series. I think he averaged over 30-some points a game, but he didn't have a 10-point performance. Now, Curry had some really good games in there. He had the one where he made the 9 threes. So then game 4, he came through and had a huge performance. But his performance was like this. KD's was steady, consistent, and he played at a high level, so he deserves to be MVP.
What do you think that this means in terms of this win? Obviously, they've won 3 championships in 4 years. People are now talking about dynasty. They're starting to at least begin to be compared with some of the great teams of all time. When you look at the Celtics, you look at the Lakers, you look at the Bulls, you look at teams of that stature.
I think they can keep the team together. There's some talk that KD may leave, that he doesn't have anything else to play for now that he's won a few championships, that he can go someplace else. Personally, I hope he stays.
Why?
Because I actually like dynasties. I mean, I enjoy basketball. Back when the Lakers were on top, I didn't enjoy it as much when Chicago was on top, but still, I enjoy dynasties. It's good when you have someone who's king of the hill, and it gives everyone something to chase for. You know where the bar is when there's someone, the big bully sitting there on top. You know what the strengths are, the weaknesses are. You know exactly what you have to do and where you have to get better in order to knock that team off the top mantle. So when it was LA going against Boston, or LA going against Philly or New York, you kind of knew what you had to do to beat LA and how they performed, where they operated at, and what you had to do. But when you don't have a clear dynasty, and it's just various teams, it may be good for basketball to mix the championships up and distribute among a lot of teams, but it makes it much more difficult for teams to get better and know what they have to prepare for. Now, like Houston was trying to get better for one single purpose, to get past Golden State. That is their bar. They know what they have to do to get there now. They came close this year, and hopefully next year they may improve, change the system up, add another player that will allow them to get past Golden State. But right now, they know what they're chasing. Any other team like New Orleans knows what they're chasing if they want to get to a championship.
Absolutely.
On the east side, chances are the championship goes through Boston. So the Torontos, the Indianas, the Philadelphias, those teams that are up and coming and want to get to a championship know they have to get past Boston. And so when you have the two teams that are sitting on top, where other teams are chasing them, then you're forced to get better, or those two teams are going to keep playing against each other. So yeah, I enjoy the dynasties. It gives you something to work towards, and it's just unfortunate our local team here has nothing to chase because there's no chance of us even getting past San Antonio, who's on the downside, let alone trying to catch up with Houston or Golden State.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a while before the Mavericks build back to the level that they were during their championship year, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is right now. And I guess we can't really blame any one man for that. So,
Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
Yeah, good old Mark Cuban. So, in the few minutes we have left, what did you think about the referee? I mean, there was some complaints there. And then the bigger question is, I just thought about this. I cannot believe how much talk there was about people feeling sorry for LeBron James. It seemed, there was talk that the referees weren't giving him a fair shake, and with Golden State having so much talent, and then the referees calling an uneven game, it just really makes the underdog that much more of an underdog. So there was this talk about the unfairness of the calls. There was this unfairness that Golden State just had too much talent. Maybe the coaching, but there were a lot of people who were feeling sorry for LeBron, but this guy's the greatest player in the world. Why are you feeling sorry for him?
Well, I can't speak to every specific item. I think that typically the superstar players are usually going to get the benefit of the doubt on some of their calls. Obviously, LeBron is kind of a Mack truck, so sometimes he's going to get overlooked. But ultimately, when you look at it, if I go back to the Boston series and I look at that, the rejection that LeBron had, I think, with Terry Rozier in one of the later games. To me, that was clearly a foul. So there are a lot of fouls that go his way.
Sure.
So ultimately, when it comes right down to a series, I think the best team ultimately wins. And so there may be folks who feel sorry for LeBron because he didn't get another championship. As far as the calls, yeah, I would agree with you. I think the refs let them play. Did they make some poor calls? Yeah, but I think ultimately over a series, that's why it's not one game. It's a series, best 4 out of 7. Ultimately, the best team wins.
And when the team won in this fashion, when you get swept in a series, you can't blame any other factor other than the other team was better than you.
Right. And in this case, Golden State was that much better than Cleveland, and obviously they had the best team, even though Cleveland had the best player.
If it goes 7 games and you lose in 7, now you go back to game 1 and say, but because of that, we would have won or had a chance to win. But even in game 1, the game went into overtime. You still had a chance in overtime to win the game. But what happened? Golden State, went on a streak, and it didn't take them very long, almost 2 minutes, where Cleveland wasn't scoring and Golden State was scoring, and then find yourself down 11 points just like that.
And I think, unfortunately for Cleveland in that game 1, that they let that call so distract them from the game that Golden State ended up taking over, and Cleveland was still worried about the call in overtime.
Yes. So sometimes it's best to just forget about the call, stop arguing with the referees, and just keep your head in the game, and just continue to play.
And then, unfortunately, on top of that, we now found out that LeBron fractured his hand after game 1, and so, as great as he was in the series, he would have been even better if he wouldn't have fractured his hand.
Do you think so?
I think so. At the end of the day,
how much better? He averaged a triple-double. How much better could he be?
But he was playing with a fracture. Even in game 4, you could tell when he was going and congratulating everybody else that he was holding his right hand ginger in game 4. He injured his hand after game 1.
Well, if he can play with an injury and still play well
and a fractured hand
with an injured hand, that just goes to show just how much better he is than everyone else playing this game. Because most players wouldn't be able to play, especially on the right hand, and you're right-handed.
Yeah. The only reason that I would feel bad for LeBron James is that he didn't get more from his supporting cast. Kevin Love. I know Kevin Love should have been better. J.R. Smith should have been better.
J.R. Smith
George Hill should have been good. I mean, if you want to feel bad for LeBron, the only way you can feel bad for him is he didn't get more from his supporting cast. I can't think of any other reason you would.
J.R. Smith is an embarrassment. And why the coach left him as a starter in that game, in the series, is beyond me. The guy just did not play up and live up to it. Maybe he's better coming off the bench. Who knows?
I would agree because ultimately, you know, even in game 2, you were expecting something big from J.R. Smith. It didn't happen.
It didn't happen, right. So, in fact, in game 3, I really thought Cleveland was going to win that game. The score was down quarter per quarter, so this was they were on pace to make this their kind of a game. And when that didn't happen, I was like, oh man, you may as well mail in game 4. It doesn't matter anymore. You're not going to win 4 straight against Golden State. That's just not going to happen. I know they came back from 3-1 a few years ago, but that was 3-1, and that was without KD. With KD being a factor, like you said, even when Curry and Thompson weren't playing so well, and if that happened without KD, then Cleveland easily win that game. But with KD being the factor now, the X factor that you can't that Golden State can count on, but you can't necessarily count on neutralizing him, then he can keep them in the game even without the other two living to their stature, playing to their level.
Let me ask you this. I mean, KD said that he's more than likely going to stay with Golden State. As he said, they're trying to work out some of the details of his contract. But I mean, you look at that team, you look at the depth that they have. Now, obviously, Houston pushed him to a game 7. I think if it would not have been for Chris Paul getting injured in game, I believe, 5, was it, towards the end of that game, that it could have clearly been a different series and you might have had Houston in the finals.
You may have. I mean, it was close. And so I think KD stays in Golden State. It would be foolish for him to go anyplace else. That now he has a chance to solidify his legacy of being one of the best ever. He can win a few more championships, which he has a chance to do there in Cleveland. No, I'm sorry, in Golden State. I said Cleveland. LeBron, on the other hand, I think he needs to pack his bags to get to Cleveland, to Houston as quickly as he can. And because a Houston team with LeBron gives him a chance to not have to play so many minutes, he can have a 25-point game with Houston, and considering that would be well enough for him to win. 25 points in Cleveland, depending on who they're playing, may not be enough for them to win. He can manage his minutes there. He has other players that can carry the team when he's on the bench, which is what he doesn't have now. And that may be the missing piece for Houston to get past Golden State and actually dominate the West.
Who do you think the offense goes through if you have James Harden, Chris Paul, and LeBron?
Well, that's the thing. I think Chris Paul's on a 1-year contract. In fact, there were several players on that team that were on 1- and 2-year contract. I'm not sure if LeBron goes to Houston that Chris Paul is re-signed. And the reality is there's only so much money to spread around. LeBron's not going to do a KD and take a pay cut to go to Houston. So he's going to want his money and to be well compensated for his talents, which is his right. So Houston will have to give up something. In fact, Golden State's going to be in that same boat. I think you're going to lose at least 2 players off Golden State's team in order to re-sign Kevin Durant to long term. He's going to want to be maxed out, whatever the max is these days, 35 million, 40 million on his side. So they're going to give up a player or 2 to make that happen.
All right, we'll see what happens. So now the off season has officially begun.
Off season has officially begun. Let the negotiations start. And that brings us to the end of our NBA Finals discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. We wish you to please come back and spread the word. Please subscribe to our channel. Without you, none of this is possible. And then let's thank some of our sponsors, Fitness 360
and MOTC Telecom.
Yes, and then For Us Films, so please come back and like I said, spread the word. We're trying to get our viewership up, and we're certainly trying to get our subscriber numbers up. And you can help us by recommending us to your friends, family, and even your frenemies, if you like. We're not choosy. We take all viewers. So, And please come back and watch some of our other videos. And then if you have any comments that you want to share with us, suggestions, advice, things you want us to talk about, leave us a comment on our channel, and we will be sure to get back with you. That's a promise.
All right, everyone have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.